I'd like to welcome to the podcast Jon Reilly. He is a leader in AI and generative BI. He got his start at Sonos and product, and then went on to have a really successful career with Forged in product and eventually marketing. He's now the co-founder of Akkio, and so I'd like to welcome Jon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, super happy to have you. Go ahead, Peter, kick us off.
Yeah, well, we wanted to first start to discuss your background a little bit. I know seeing mentioned some of these experiences that you've been in or these companies that you've worked in. One of the things that stands out to me is just the high scale nature, right? Like Forged, these are industries that grew pretty quickly. And so I'm wondering if there were any lessons you were learning while at Forged or Sonos that helped prepared you for just the super high growth experience that working in AI is?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. I started my career as an engineer at Sony Electronics, like designing televisions, and back then, we were in first place in the market in the U.S., but we'd fight every year for like a few percent market growth, right? It's like a saturated market, and you're trading off against competition. There's actually a really like interesting learning I had as I moved to Sonos, the wireless speaker company, when they were like very early, and I still had that mindset that like fighting for 3% growth was going to be the key task, and I had to learn that like in a new and emerging category, really like the rising tide lifts all boats is like really true. And you have to just kind of think about like delivering value and like scale. And I'll give you one example. We had these two speaker products back in the beginning. They were like an amp and a Connect that is called the ZP80 and the ZP100 back in the day. And these things would like power external speakers. And when we built our first integrated speaker product, my expectation is it just made the purchase process a lot easier because you now didn't have to pick speakers to mate up with the amp. And I thought that product would decline in sales volume, but what actually happened is its sales went up because awareness of the overall like product line and like Sonos as a category went up. And so like the whole group of people who had no idea that you could buy this streaming device and connect it to your speakers started buying it. And that mindset actually was like a sort of a pivotal like learning for me, is that when you're in sort of a high growth like situation, and I think we see that with AI and ML today as well, like it's less about like fighting for slivers of share and more about like delivering real value to users and making it really clear what that value is, and trying to get them aware or trying the product. And so it's as you like launch better features or better functionality, it becomes sort of an awareness game. Like your job is to try and get more people to try it, to see what they can do with it. And there's a lot of noise in an emerging category, as I'm sure you guys like see every day. Like literally everyone is slapping the word AI on everything.
Right.
So, yeah, I think so. So you've got like two key things to succeed in that environment: is like build credibility and actually like deliver great value to customers. And just keep in mind, like you're not fighting for slivers of share. It's not us versus someone else. It's like us helping the customer, and that's the mindset you have to have as you approach it.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the thread in the DNA of like everything you've done, is kind of be in these environments that are growing so quickly and very new to market. You just touched on AI and ML, sorry. For our listeners at home that are not familiar with those acronyms, do you want to give a quick synopsis of what those mean?
Sure. Artificial intelligence is like the meta category header that covers like a whole bunch of technologies, like large language models, like that'd be like your Chat GPT, bunch of others, as well as like more traditional data science disciplines. Neural networks, machine learning is what ML stands for, and it's a mechanism of like using a neural architecture to learn the patterns in data and then leveraging those patterns for downstream decision making. It's sometimes referred to as predictive AI. There's a lot of like really hard technology happening in the space that enables people to do things they couldn't do before and automate things that couldn't be automated before. The industry as a whole seems to have like broadly adopted the term AI for all of these different technologies. But there is a lot of nuance in the different like places where you might leverage different pieces of it to derive value for a business or for your personal use.
Do you think that's beneficial, just like the broad summary of AI versus maybe more nuanced conversation about what people are doing?
I don't know beneficial is the right word. It kind of reminds me of like when the internet like became a thing. I'm old. I was around for that period of time. And everyone was like getting on the internet and having an e-commerce page. And like, there's actually a lot of nuance to like what your service is and how it interacts with people in an online capacity and in an offline capacity and how those two things come together. And the different types of things you might be able to do. I think at the front end of like a sort of a tech explosion, it's always going to be like kind of confusing. But what happens immediately following like the sort of technology unlock is a lot of people start thinking about how to build application layers on top of it that make it usable by everyone to get the jobs that you need to get done accomplished. Most of this stuff starts at the command line with engineers like doing hard like engineering, but it only really takes off when the average person can start to use the technology, right? The average person can browse to a website or make a purchase. And so a lot of the work, and it takes a long time to get there, like usually, is actually taking a technology and making it usable. And actually, that's what I've tried to do my whole career is take something complicated and make it more easy for other people to take advantage of what it actually unlocks. And I think we're going through that now. Like, look at, ChatGPT as an example. Large language models, the underpinning technology there was around for, many years. But it wasn't until you could sort of have a chat interaction with it that it really like clicked over for a bunch of people and took off in terms of use. And our thesis at the company I'm building now, Akkio, has been really similar to that, which is like, there's a lot of really valuable technology you could apply to your data problems. But until it's easy enough to use, there's just a huge barrier to entry. And so, our goal is to build consumer grade ease of use in a business product. But overall, I think, it's tying it back, like the terms are going to be messy. There's going to be a lot of hype. There's going to be a lot of people who claim they do something they don't. That this always happens at the front end of this stuff. Because there's incentive to do it, and people are still trying to figure out what actually works and what doesn't. But give it a little bit of soak time, and the people who build real value will, in my estimation, emerge victorious. And at the end of the day, this is just going to get easier for people to use and easier to understand. So it's complicated now, but like 3 years from now, it should be much simpler.
Yeah, I think that's so important that it's no longer just these high echelons of society that have access to these products, but everyone now has, access to incredibly high scientific information and tools. Akkio is one of those tools. You want to tell us a little bit about what it does? We use it in our business. We love it. We'd love to hear a little bit about Akkio.
Yeah, we are a platform for interacting with data that allows agencies or consultancies or even people in end businesses to explore their data a lot more easily, transform it for analysis a lot more easily. So you're no longer stuck working in like a spreadsheet, making a pivot table or trying to like write some complicated formula. But it also lets you build these machine learning models to actually do predictive AI on your data, to surface the patterns in your historic data and use them to make better decisions going forward, both like in like automated processes as well as in like strategic level decision making. So we actually help you surface the real causal relationships between the stuff that's going on and your key outcomes. And to tie that back to like practical applications, this is like, if you want to understand like what makes someone more likely to buy your product or less likely to buy your product, we make that incredibly easy to do. And then if you want to take the average person who shows up, and fills out a form as interested in purchasing your product, we could tell you like how likely they are to actually buy. So you could talk to the most likely people first, because time of responsiveness is incredibly important to closing deals. So you can think of Akkio like a next generation data tool that allows people who are really working in the marketing, sales, like business operations space to start to leverage this tool chain that they haven't been able to use before. In most companies and with most agencies or consultancies, to date, it's largely been there's a data science team or a data science contractor, and you're hiring these people to do these really complex tasks. That's changing now, and our goal is to make it so that individuals working in these like critical areas of the business can do this themselves. And so that's what we're building with Akkio. And the tool is designed to make it really easy if you're an agency. Agencies in general, like you, are live and die by being on the cutting edge of technology, right? Being able to bring a level of expertise to the client that maybe the client doesn't have internally to their business. Clients tend to lag tech adoption curves. And so we're really trying to make the tool as useful as possible for agencies, because they are at the front end of that adoption curve, so they can use it to deliver like real value to their clients. And yeah, so that's what it does. And it, makes it super easy to ask a natural language question of your data and get an answer. Makes it super easy to figure out what the patterns in the data are.
Absolutely. Yeah. We live and die by early adoption, but we also live and die by the results of data. And by drawing those inferences easily and putting those in that data in the hands of everyone in the company, everyone can make more informed decisions without having to go to a data scientist, and make faster decisions that way. So it's extremely powerful. We've seen extremely impressive results with all of our clients that are integrating it. And we're excited to continue to see where the space goes.
Yeah, a lot of us are still in the 3%, right? Like 3% growth or a 3% advantage over a competitor. That's a significant thing, right? For our agency, we look at the 20% number. If we can get a 20% advantage, that's a game changer for us in the industries we compete in and the industries a lot of our clients compete in, right? So for me, I think that's one of the big things in terms of why these companies should be using AI in their data and not just in content production and maybe process automation and that type of stuff, is if we can make these decisions that get you 20% more efficient, that can be a game changer if your business model is a law firm, right? If you got your leads for 20% less, the law firms are not innovating, right? Maybe there will be some on the margin type innovation, but really that business model hasn't changed. And so if you could get your lead costs down 20%, that's a game changer. And I think a lot of the economy is not in AI or, the 3D printing. A lot of the economy is still in these like more traditional business models where 3%, 5%, 20% would be a big game changer.
And we often see results much bigger than that, actually. Like like the traditional way of doing things, where you're like, I call, it's like exploratory data analysis, or trying to read the tea leaves in Excel of what the hell's going on in your data. It's not very efficient, and it's really prone to misinterpretation. But when you can apply a machine to doing that job, you get like the truth out of the data pretty directly without the ability to like misrepresent it or misunderstand it. And then if you can make your decisions based on like really being able to surface the truth or the patterns, the results are usually pretty good. And the barrier to doing that has just been the complexity of like having to like start in a data science notebook to like look at the data. There's just typically not that expertise set in the operations team of any business, and marketing or sales. And so that that's where really in the last couple of years the technology has reached a level where you can start to build an application layer on top of it that makes it easy enough to apply to the problem that more people can do it. And so, but the returns are huge, right? Because the difference between like, I'm working in a spreadsheet, eyeballing my ROAS and trying to figure out like, was it this part of the title or the landing page or what was it that drove that outcome, versus just like saying, I'm interested in optimizing this outcome. Surface to me which pieces of the input are predictive of positive return on advertising spend and which are negative. It just shortcuts basically a lot of work, and it makes the experimentation process faster. And like in parallel with that, the ability to generate creative content is exploding with, like you can use language models, you can use image models. So you can iterate faster, but you can also make really data determined decisions like for the first time that will help guide that iteration and help direct you into what the right fit story is for your customer base. And the results are like, typically it's a lot of very low hanging fruit.
You mentioned the hype around AI earlier, and I've seen it with some of these more traditional business intelligence tools, right? Like the business intelligence tools we used 10 years ago, 5 years ago, now branding themselves with AI, right? If you go to their homepage, they're talking about AI, but the tool still works exactly the same as it did. The platform is the same as the platform we worked with 5 years ago, but now it's AI. Do you think that helps, or do you think that hurts? Is that something that you guys are trying to differentiate Akkio in contrast to?
I think it's a natural symptom of an emerging like technology space where incumbents see that this is going to be the next thing, and they start to try and adopt it and integrate it in their product as quickly as they can because it's a big threat to their operations and their way of doing business. But they also have some difficulties because typically they've built a lot of infrastructure, a lot of like their go-to-market motion. Everything is built around the older way of doing things, which is like, visualizing data, creating live data pipelines, things like Power BI. It's hard to tear that up and start over in the ways that you might need to in order to build an AI native tool. So in some ways it's an opportunity for startups like us where, we started assuming everything we did would be AI derived and AI native. We've been at it for 4 years now, like just building AI and machine learning, like delivered solutions as much as we can. I would be like really like frustrated if I was working in a company that had built an old way of doing things, trying to shove this in, because you almost have to tear up your core foundation of technology in order to adapt to it. So, it's not surprising that everyone's working on that. Like, I think like anyone in the space can see like writing a formula to interact with data is probably, on a short lifespan, like going forward, people are just going to ask for what they want in natural language and you're going to get it. And that's going to be the way everyone does things. Getting from here to there and putting that through a platform where you built a ton of complexity and infrastructure without disrupting your current client use cases is like really hard. But natural as part of the adoption cycle. So, I think like at the end, like anything, I would recommend that it comes down to like actually trying the, AI portion of any tool, seeing how it works, doing your comparison shopping like normal, and then picking the one that works best for your need. And on the consumer side, it's going to be noisy. You're going to have to like try different things and experiment if you want to be at the front end of the curve. But there are a lot of benefits to being at the front end of that curve, right? If you can outperform your competition by 2x, if you can get sharper on your market targeting, if you're an agency, if you can like roll up to a pitch and, show how you would use AI to solve the problem, you're going to win more business like directly. And so the wins are there, but it's not without work. Like anything, you're going to have to try a bunch of different tools, and you're going to have to find the places where you can really leverage them. And I think it's going to be really noisy and messy for a few years, like anything here when we go through these big transitions.
I agree. Speaking of messy, a lot of people obviously hear AI, they get freaked out. They're like, this is the beginning of the end. I'd love to know your thoughts around ethical considerations, where this is going. Is the net positive, net negative?
Yeah, my general take is more of a positive frame on this than some people have. Like every time a big new like technology unlock comes around, like computing or the internet, generally speaking, like it makes everything more efficient. It helps level the playing field. It raises the global standard of living. There's a ton of inefficiencies in everything we do in all of our interconnected systems as a society, like on a global basis. This presents the opportunity to make all of those things work better, work more fairly. It'll give people the opportunity to do things they couldn't do with less access to like education resources that they might have previously needed. It'll also have massive like dislocation implications, like anything again, like the people who were like working on like manual computations for like drafting architecture designs had to learn to use the new tool set and do it in a CAD program, but at the end, like there's not less of those jobs. Like when the spreadsheet was invented, there weren't less analysts, there were more, right? Like the ability to leverage your data to value created more opportunities, and will continue, in my estimation, to create more opportunities for people to like really build real value. The nature of how you leverage technology will change, but that's always the case. And then you have these people saying AGI is going to come along, like general intelligence, it's going to be smarter than us, and that's a I don't really like personally feel like a lot of the technologies we're talking about today are going to deliver that sort of like singularity thing. Like, not, maybe we'll get there. I don't know personally what that timeline might be, but I think what we're really looking at is the ability to access the world of information in a new and interesting way that hasn't been there before. It's like before you had Google search, and now you have ChatGPT. And ChatGPT can pull like information from everywhere to answer like or support like content creation in a very specific thing that you need to get done. It's a new way of like accessing sort of the world of information as we have it today. But there's some open questions in my mind about how much it's like pushing our knowledge forward, right? It can find patterns that we didn't previously find in our existing knowledge and surface those. That's what machine learning has always been able to do. It's not like finding new physics yet or anything like that, right?
Right.
And so like overall, I think like we'll find that society generally benefits, but there'll be a period of like dislocation and discomfort. In terms of ethics, like when you're talking about patterns in data, it's important to remember that if you make decisions based on patterns in data, that you're going to reinforce whatever patterns were used when that data was created, right?
Right.
And so to the extent that the patterns in that data are things that you don't want to reinforce, like there's systemic issues with equality or things like that we don't believe decisions should be made on as a society,
Right.
we have to be really careful. We have to consider that this has the potential of like reinforcing existing paradigms because it's using like existing information to learn, and that's where you get the stuff with like they have to spend a long time after training a large language model on everything on the internet, training it to behave
Right.
in a way that we think is socially acceptable, because there's a lot of socially unacceptable behavior that happens on the internet, and it's not like particularly self-correcting yet. This is a machine. It doesn't know that some things are okay and some things are not. But at the same time, we collectively as a society like come together and decide on what's all right and not. And then we can like reinforce or guide the behavior of these tools to make sure that it follows what we think is right. And And so I think like anything, like any piece of technology, it could be used for bad, it could be used for good. We collectively are responsible for regulating and thinking about how it's going to work, and making sure we use it for things that we want it to be used for.
Right. And when we talk about those parameters that we are going to absolutely have to put on because of these systemic patterns that we've had in our history, it's interesting to think about, if these products become privatized, like who gets to set those parameters? And then us as consumers, really do almost vote with our dollars, vote with our eyeballs, and, lean towards products that we believe represent our views. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes up. I know there's a lot of talk
It
about.
verges into a whole freedom of speech thing, but like
Totally.
but there's a control mechanism hung on the back end of that where generally we all like achieve some level of consensus on what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
And so in my estimation, this will work out in the end. And it's just going to take some time for everything to work through.
Yeah, I'm sure we're the beginning of a very messy middle, but I think it's going to be a net positive for society.
You mentioned the efficiencies, right? And for us, I think in our experience using Akkio, the efficiencies has been a big part of the value. Even like little things, right? We've tried to teach people how to make pivot tables. It's like something you get or you don't get. And if you don't get, it's like pulling your hair out trying to teach someone how to make a pivot table. So even if you just look at the efficiencies of like not training someone to make pivot tables, there's a lot of time saving on that front. For us, I think one of the biggest values in using Akkio is just the speed of getting a dashboard to a client, right? Agency clients love speed, even if it's like arbitrary, right? Oh, it takes time to build this thing out. Like seeing something immediately builds confidence with clients. Clients like it. It's good account management, right? And in the olden days, it would take a month to build a dashboard out somewhere. And with Akkio, we can build out a dashboard for them in a couple of hours and have something in a client hand. And so there's these little things in the process that those are kind of like arbitrary efficiencies, right? But there are real efficiencies that can be made with using Akkio and deploying Akkio. Are there some common use cases, especially for agencies like our company, that can be used, or these efficiencies can be found by using Akkio?
Yeah, I think there's really to your point, like two key value propositions for an agency. The first is like helping the pitch process, right? And when an agency does a pitch, particularly a digital marketing agency, they first start by looking at all of the advertising you've done before. Like they get access to your Google Ads account, your Meta account, your CRM, maybe HubSpot or Salesforce. The first part of the job is like really looking at what's been done, doing some analytics on that, and then coming up with a proposal about what you do differently and why it would be impactful. If you can leverage AI in that process, it's going to be faster and easier, as you point out, but also it's going to be more compelling for your client because they're going to see like how deep your analytics can go. And sometimes even something as simple as like sharing them a chat window where they can like talk with data, ask specific questions about what's going on live, is actually really meaningful because like you said today, like it's actually a subset of people who are able to even use a pivot table, let alone like really leverage it to great effect. And then secondly, when you actually start to implement like a campaign, for example, like a pay-per-click campaign, being able to like monitor what's driving positive outcome, like model that, report that back in like relatively real time. You can do things like build a lead scoring model. You can look at the quality of leads coming in from any campaign. You can like look at their cost, and you can come up with a like estimated value like faster than ever before. You can do it without waiting through the sales cycle, and then you can iterate more quickly, which means you'll be able to deliver more value. Improving your spend on advertising goes directly to your business's bottom line. And so by giving customers better outcomes, you retain business longer, you get better value. And so those are the real ways that like it actually hits the road. Marketing is really two things. One, it's like creating the right content, being creative, but two, it's like testing, measuring, like iterating and optimizing. And that's all very data driven. And I think that part of the data driven stack is becoming more and more important in terms of delivering true performance. The tools are getting to the point where you can do that like more easily. And early adopters are starting to use them.
So when seeing I got started in digital marketing like 10 years ago, we would call ourselves the professional online gambling department, because a lot of marketing feels like that, right? Like not just advertising, but SEO. You spend all of this time research, you write an article, you put it out there, and then it hits or it doesn't hit. There's like a lot of these things that feel an awful lot like gambling. And I think that Akkio, the predict function in Akkio, gives you more confidence around that, right? You can take, hey, these are the articles that I've written for SEO, run it through the predict function with the data from the past, and have at least a little bit more confidence that you're not just, gambling when you throw the new article.
You can kind of like count cards a little bit now.
Yeah, the reality, it is kind of like letting you count cards. The reality with something like SEO is it's algorithmic, right? Like Google has written like an algorithm on their end that decides what ranks and what doesn't rank. And it's related to like both the content, its like length, the behavior of people interacting with it, how many views it gets, how long they're on page. There's a lot of variables in like what causes a page to rank on a search engine, but it's also programmatic. And so if you can stand up on the other side of that equation and tease those patterns out by using machine learning, then you can perform way better. You're no longer randomly guessing. You can look at historic examples and how they performed, and you can train a model specifically for your topic area to predict if something will perform or not. And the cool thing about SEO is you've got access to not only your data, but all of your competitors' pages and how they ranked and what the content was there, because that's all public. And so you can really start to like meet their algorithm with your algorithm. And when you do that, you're no longer gambling. You're actually making informed bets based on like past patterns. And that's going to have much better results. It's like counting cards. I guess that's a good analogy. You have like a cheat code. And so that's where like you start to get these like high value results.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that.
How did Akkio come to be? Was there something like in your background at Sonos and Markforged or Sony that led you to start the company, or what influenced that decision?
Yeah, it largely boiled down to I was product most of my background, but I ended up also like running marketing at Markforged. And in that process, I realized there was a lot of places where we needed to use machine learning to sort out like the good stuff from the noise. And we tried to find some tools to let us do that, because that was like super critical to optimizing the business. We had leads coming in from Facebook, for example. We had lots of leads coming in from Facebook for 3D printing, but we were trying to sell industrial 3D printers. And a very small subset of those leads were actually any good, and the sales team should be talking to. The vast majority of them were terrible, but we didn't really have a way to tell which was which. So we had this problem where like the sales team had to call every one of them in order to get the 1 in 50, and I'm making up numbers here, but just to like kind of paint the picture, that was actually like going to purchase the product or be valuable. There's a couple options there. We could turn off Facebook advertising, but what happens is we lose like the acquisition of these like actually very core leads, or we could figure out how to like stack rank the probability to buy based on firmographics and behavior, and then tell the sales team, call these ones first, call these ones second, call these ones third. And Akkio was really born out of frustration at a lack of tooling that enabled us to do that. We tried to go with application-specific solutions on the market. They didn't work. And at the end of the day, we thought, I believe there's a lot of people who have this data who are reasonably savvy at working with it, who would like to be able to use cutting edge technology to get better results, but are currently blocked because of the giant like education curve, the sort of like difficulty curve of learning to like build a model. I mean, people have to go to school for like, many years in order to become a data scientist. But it doesn't have to be like that, right? It could be that all of the complexity is built into an application that makes it much easier. And that was the idea for Akkio. Our vision was like, we looked at all the companies that we'd worked at and that we'd worked with, and they all had data scientists working on a small, like super critical piece of their business, usually in their product, which is their differentiated marketing edge. Almost none of them had any time to apply data science to any of their operations. But the opportunities in operations are just enormous, right? Like there's so many places where you can like dramatically change the trajectory of a company by impacting its revenue acquisition or optimizing its sales funnel. And so that was what really started it, like a frustration at lack of tools that let someone like me, who's data savvy, but not a data scientist, who has a very specific job to do, build more pipeline that's going to close and drive more revenue, actually accomplish those tasks. And so that was sort of the founding trigger.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, right, sales is the bigger driver in a business, right? It keeps all of these companies moving forward, and your sales team is pretty far removed from data and analytics team, right? Like we've worked in some pretty big e-commerce companies where analytics and sales, not only do they not talk to each other, they're like in separate buildings, right? They don't even see each other. Do you think that Akkio is a tool that just like you're run-of-the-mill sales guy, you're working in sales maybe for a SaaS company or an e-commerce company, you have your own data, right? These are the people who bought from me. These are the backgrounds of where they came from, the companies. Do you think that Akkio is a tool that a salesperson could use on their own, pull their data in there, and get enough insights that they could do more damage, like going into a tool like Zoom Info and getting, right, like finding their ideal lead, the type of lead that has the whatever more closer correlation to sales, and then going and doubling down on just those types of people in whatever sales research tool they're using?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And my honest answer is like, it depends on your willingness to like dig into data today. I don't think we're done making our tool as easy to use as it can be. We're still on the trajectory of making it more simple and more easy across the board. I think it's easier than working in Excel. Is it as easy as it needs to be for your average salesperson to start to derive value? I think it's easier than than maybe any other solution they have on the market, but I don't think it's easy enough yet. And so, we wake up every day trying to think about how to make it easier. Someone like yourself, Peter, using the tool, you're very data savvy. You dig into data every day. You kind of took to it like a fish to water, no problems, right? Somebody who's less sophisticated with data, we're still not all the way there yet. There's still, it is easier. It can be easier yet. And we're working on that every day. I hope that as we continue to make things easier and easier to use, the set of people who can start to use it expands, and that's the goal, right? And you see that mirrored in our market motion. The platform's open; anybody can go try it out and try and use it. The idea there is if anyone struggles or can't figure it out, they ask, hey, what's going on here? And then we think about like, how could we make this easier to understand? And then we iterate along with their questions until we get less questions on an area. And if we keep doing that over time, it just keeps getting easier. So that's our approach to making it easier. I don't think we're done yet. We can and should make it wildly easier than it is even now. But I'm also one of those people who's never satisfied with where we're at on the product. So, take that how you would.
So what comes next for Akkio? Is it the ease of use, or is it the power of the tool and the capabilities of the tool? What are like the next things that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, I mean, there's roughly three key pillars of our platform. The ability to get data from anywhere and push it back to anywhere. We're building a lot of that, so you can just plug straight into your, Google Ads platform or your, GA4, your Meta platform. You can just pull the data directly from the systems without needing to do any sort of complicated other things. The second pillar is like transforming the data or exploring it with natural language. We're continuing to invest there to make it even more easy for people to do. There's like when somebody who's not particularly technical and working with data asks a question about data, sometimes they do this very common thing in natural language and load 10 different questions into one prompt, like, tell me 6 different things at the same time. The specificity of the ask is usually open to interpretation. You've probably seen this if you've ever worked with an analyst and you ask them to like go tell you a piece of information about something. If you're not very specific about how you want that looked at, they may bring back something different than you expect. That's sort of the way it works with a language model behind the scenes today. So, we're working on interpretability of user asks, asking follow-up questions automatically. If your question isn't clear, well, did you mean this or did you mean this? Like, help us understand how to make this fit to what you're actually looking to understand. And then the third pillar is that machine learning engine where we take your data history, your custom company data, right? The thing that, one way to think about the data world is like a lot of these technologies give a level playing field. Anyone can go into ChatGPT. They all have access to the same tool and capabilities. That's a level playing field between businesses. Your custom business data, the information you have about your customers, how they interacted with your product, if they decided to buy or not, that's your differentiated advantage. And that's where the machine learning engine comes into play, because you can build custom models based on that data and use it in your decision making. So that's a third pillar. And we're going to continue to invest in all three of those pillars, the data ingestion and interaction, so you can build this into your systems easily. Anybody can do it. You don't have to be like an IT administrator. The explore, transform, understand what's going on with natural language, make it really easy. And then the actually model your custom data, custom models for what's going on, and then surfacing those patterns for decision making. And you'll see us keep pushing the boundaries in all of those areas. Like it's a lot, but that's necessary to make an end-to-end platform that one person can go stand up in 10 minutes, as opposed to some of these, like, historically you wanted to do all those things I just described. You'd be talking about 6 months worth of setup, probably 10 people involved in connecting systems and wiring them together. The new way of doing things is going to, in my estimation, if you need to have like a certification of skill set you put on your LinkedIn to use a product, that's not a good sign for that product's longevity. Right. Things have got to be easier to use. So that's what you'll see us invest in: ease of use, and then building out those pillars to make them even more simple and capable.
As you made the switch over more towards the entrepreneur side and building this project from scratch, has there been any big surprises or anything that you didn't expect?
I think the adoption curve was a little bit slower than we expected. And, I think that's often like a thing that happens with entrepreneurs, because when you live at like, we started this 4 years ago and we're like, everybody's going to be using ML in their operations in like 2 or 3 years, like, because it's so much better. And if it could be easy, it would just get rapidly adopted. But it wasn't until like really language models enabled with chat, like ChatGPT came along, that people really started thinking hard about how should I be using this in my business today. And so, I think we were early, and that's been a little bit challenging because, there's some benefits to that, because we came into the current like area of hype with some real functional core technology built. We're not some like wrapper that slapped a couple of words like AI on top of it. But at the same time, like, we've had to sort of like stick with the vision for longer than I expected we would, for people to see like, oh, I could drop this into my business and get immediate value. I think that's fairly common. Like if you're on the front edge, like timing matters. And, sometimes you think things will be adopted before they are. Fortunately, I think we made it through, and now like everyone's looking at it. So that's good. Like now we're really starting to see really leaned in adoption of the tool chain, like not just for like creating like text with chat, but actually using data to derive more value in businesses. That plus like, I think the go-to-market like approach is tricky in the analytics space. We set out knowing that if we wanted to make it really easy to use, we were going to have to build a lot of stuff. Like there's entire companies who just pull your data out of systems and push it into other systems. There's entire companies that just transform the data or let you create visualizations of the data. There's entire companies that just do custom machine learning models. There's entire companies that just do model operations and management for those deployed models. And we decided like if you wanted to do all those things easily in your operations team, you would need to be able to do that as a single person. So we built all of it. Like and that left us with a platform that works really flexibly, but it's not like an application specific solution. It's not like we are just a lead scoring tool, right? We're a tool that you can use anywhere in the stack. That makes the story a little bit harder to tell, right? And that's where like we're really partnering with agencies, folks like VIE, where you're the application expert. You understand the vertical and the needs of your customer very carefully and directly, and then you can understand how to take a platform and apply it to delivering higher value in those needs. That's the place we found like the best partnership fit in our market motion. So we are right now working entirely on making it better for agencies to be able to deliver value to their end customers by leveraging those three pillars.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more ideas I have for businesses we can build on top of Akkio, where it's like we use sales operation manager, right? Like we could go to these sales operations managers, integrate their data in here, do consulting through that, or there's a variety of things, right? Like connecting to Zoom Info. There's a million different use cases that I think you could build businesses completely off of the top of the Akkio tool.
Yeah, and that's a benefit and a curse in a way, because like if you're trying to tell like one clean, repeatable story, which is necessary as a startup, we have customers using us for an incredibly wide range of applications, from like betting on horse racing to like logistics, like predictions at like top freight forwarder in the world, and the range of utility is huge. But it makes it hard to tell a consistent story about how you use us to get value. And then that in turn loads up the user with a lot of the like thinking about how they'd apply it to their situation. And that even having to think about how to start to leverage a tool like this is a barrier to adoption. And so you'll see us tell a lot more, build a lot more guided tutorials of like, here's exactly how you use the platform to optimize your return on advertising spend using systems that you already use. And we'll make it like really, really dead simple and easy to follow that. At the same time, you can throw any arbitrary problem you have, just like a spreadsheet. Its utility extends well beyond, making a single chart.
Are you going to have the ability to have those conversations kind of in like a ChatGPT format, right? Where it's like, I don't know where to start. I have this job. I'm trying to do this thing, and then converse with the model to say, okay, what data do you have? What data can we connect in here, and kind of like hold your hand through that process?
Yeah, our vision is to make it as easy as possible over time. So we're building that like natural language experience into everything we do. I think we're still early days, but in my estimation, user experience is going to be one of the most impacted things as you see these technologies really come up the use curve. We have to rethink like hard structured experiences and start to think about like, if you give us a data set, we have a lot of information from that data set about what you're trying to do. If you tell us what you're trying to do and give us a data set, we can actually do most of the job for you just from that set of information. and we can start to make suggestions about how to like accomplish what you're trying to do. We can show you insights that you don't have to ask for. We can figure out what's relevant and start to surface that for you. And so you very much are describing the end state vision of a very easy to use platform as like, I'm trying to do blank for my business, whatever it is. And then, it's, well, okay, what data systems do you have? Let's get those hooked up. Let's do the job. And, as much as we can use like agents, let's call them, because I think really like in the past, that's like API integrations, that's like lots of complex software to make happen. But in the future, I think those tasks really become automated and really can be driven by anybody. So, okay, I'm using, Google Ads and HubSpot, and I have like 3 other data systems. Here's my like usage data system. Like, okay, cool. Give me a few pieces of information to grant me access to those systems, and off we go to the races solving your problem. And I think like, the old way of doing things, you could build that as a very specific workflow where you just followed like a set of steps and did each thing. But now it's like hyper application specific. The new way of doing things, I think, whatever the task you're trying to accomplish is, you can go through it in that manner. And I think it's going to take us a few years to get to that ease of use you described, but it's definitely the way things are going to go. And when you see people talk about AI agents, that's what we're talking about, right? That the ability to interact with other systems for you without having to code against their API, to understand what you want to have happen from a natural language request, and then to go make that happen.
For sure. Do you have any tips for someone who's trying to build a team? I think like obviously when you are building a new project, the team's super important. Do you have any team building tips for someone in similar shoes?
Yeah, like a couple, like some of them are specific to like how we've decided to build Akkio, which is we're remote first. We never got like an office going. We try and hire the best talent anywhere we can. But that means you have to hire people who are self-starting, like high agency, take ownership, and like get stuff done. And so I think it's probably like a lot harder if you were a large business that was an office first business that transitioned to hybrid during COVID or something. But if you're just starting out, like you can and should be looking for the people who are going to thrive in a remote first environment, and thinking a lot about that. And then my other criteria is we use AI to build AI. Like if you're going to believe that all of these tools make everyone more efficient at their jobs and allow everyone to do things better, you better be doing that internally to your company, or you're like really missing the boat. And so if we hire a software engineer, they need to be using Copilot or some other mechanism of helping them code. And we see big gains in code efficiency and speed when we do. If we're hiring somebody on the content marketing side, they better be versed in using a language model to help generate content or assets, and how to get the most value out of that and then edit the top of it so that you get higher quality content faster. If you're hiring someone in operations, we're dog fooding our own product, like, using it to understand, what's driving like our marketing and sales funnel. And you have to be leaned into using those tools to get the most out of them that you can, which makes us like collectively more effective at delivering, but also gets us thinking about all the ways that our product and services and value prop should change. So, we look for people who are leaned in or willing to lean into those types of like tools and like want to use, just really want to do the most they can with whatever tools are at their disposal. So that's important. And then, in a remote first environment, we try and get together. We call them on sites because we're always off site a couple times a year, to try and build the culture a little bit more directly, because that's a part that gets really hard, right? You don't get the hallway conversations, you don't get like the personal interaction on a daily basis. But that recipe, I think, largely depends on, there's a large portion of the like what's the right like fit mix approach that is very much company dependent. And we have the benefit of working with people we've worked with before. Like most of our executive team has worked with each other for many years, in some cases over 15 years. So we have sort of a core, like pre-built community that we can build on top of. I really think it's going to depend on your origins, your like level of like intra-founder relations when you think about how to structure stuff like that. And for some people, I would make the recommendation that you do in person to start. It really kind of depends.
Yeah, I think some of that's true for what we did, right? We started our company during COVID, so we've been remote the full time. And I think a big part of why we started the company is we were working for a larger agency, and we were saying, hold on, 5 people are doing 90% of the results here, right? In terms of clients signed, accounts managed, advertising spend managed, the media buying, all of that. And so I think that a lot of these people in some of these agencies are doing less research and less planning than ChatGPT is. There's a lot of work that's being done out there, especially in the agency environment, that should be replaced by AI, right? Like these C players who aren't thinking critically about a project, right? You get a brief, you write the brief, but you don't know what the product is. You don't know what the price of the product is. You never looked at the landing page, probably, right? I think a lot of that should be replaced by some of these AI tools, right? ChatGPT, especially when you plug Bing into it, it's a whole lot smarter than a lot of that work that was being done. And so we've tried to build AI into every system. Our goal is 20%, right? 20% added efficiency by using AI to like make us be able to do more. But I think everywhere we've deployed it, it's like 150% improvement at minimum. Other places, it's like 10x, right? A lot of things for us is a volume game where some of these tools, you can just get such a higher degree of volume of content produced and tested in accounts. And so, yeah, we've tried to build out the system. That's kind of why we use Akkio and how Akkio fits into the process for us, is as we've tried to build out all of our processes on AI. Akkio helps us do a lot of that, right? Business development, campaign optimization, campaign strategy. There's like a bunch of places that you can plug it in. I think we're in an arms race for agencies where if you're not operationalizing with AI right now, you're going to get left behind. Even like think 20%. If all you got was 20% added efficiency, the agencies that operationalize and get 20% added efficiencies blow the ones that don't out of the water.
Yeah, I'm with you. The reality is like there's a surprising amount of like incredibly low hanging fruit in terms of operating efficiency, and I mean, like it's hard to recognize like where it is because we're not really like. There's always been this like, let's make data-driven decisions, but it's actually quite hard to do if you don't use the right tech stack to accomplish that. What it means though is like there's so much low-hanging fruit in terms of efficiency gains that the results are often like pretty shocking for people when they start actually applying it. We see people like double their revenue by putting in a lead scoring model and calling the people more likely to convert first. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous, like, frankly, but it's really like at the end of the day, like even gaining a small sliver of advantage in each decision you make can really have like big compound downstream results in areas that are super critical to your business operations, like revenue. And so I think we'll see like, very soon that the people who do the adoption first and fastest are going to start to outcompete everybody else. And then, like any tech adoption curve, there'll be the broad majority will see that happening and realize they got to get on it right away. And there'll be some laggards who never make it across the gap and, their businesses go away and new businesses replace them. But the gains are like often kind of surprising, 20% seems like a huge win. In many cases, if you haven't been optimizing based on data, it could be like very easily achieved. And, I think you guys are seeing that too. We're seeing that with all of our customers.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you're doing as a person, right? As a person who's working in AI, which from my perspective, it's like this exponentially scaling environment where innovation is coming really fast, quickly, things are moving really fast. is there anything that you're doing in terms of like professional development, content that you're consuming, anything that helps you stay at the forefront of this industry as things are evolving?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but like I think you just have, like, the environment is changing so quickly that you have to sort of be plugged into interesting people who are posting about what's happening like up and down the space. I find X is a good place to do that if you sort of carefully curate a list of people to follow. People working in the big companies working on sort of key models that are being used by everybody. Like if you can find the people building the underlying technology and watch how they're thinking about it, there's a lot to be learned. It's not easy. I don't have like a curated list of people that I would say to go follow, but the recommendation algorithms, once you start digging into some of those paths, are pretty good. You can start with leadership at places like, Meta and OpenAI and Microsoft and Google, and kind of go from there. Look at the smaller teams building stuff too. So, part of it's like paying attention to the people sort of building at the cutting edge of like the technology curve. Then you got to pay attention to the tool chains that are emerging with applications that make it easy for people to use. You kind of got to like be online listening and paying attention to these communities. I don't think this is the type of thing you're going to read a book that someone wrote about it and understand it, but you might see an interesting paper and try and read it. And if it's like too complex, you might ask one of the tools to help explain it to you a little bit, and then you can like maybe understand it a little bit more. Like in my experience, ChatGPT is pretty good at taking something that's complicated and explaining like you're five. And so like anything, I think the internet is a fantastic learning opportunity for anyone. Like in my estimation, you could pretty much learn anything you want to learn by yourself for free if you spent the time working on it. Now, how much time you want to spend on this particular area versus diving in and applying it to your core like job, that kind of depends on what your interests are. In my estimation, like if I find something fascinating, then I just tend to like consume as much of the information around that thing as I can. But at the end of the day, it's out there. Like everything you might need to learn or would want to learn is available. You just have to go try and search it and spend some time at it. And so my advice to anybody looking to come up the curve would be, actually start doing that. Like don't sit back passively. Start finding the people who are talking, learn from them, ask questions on your own. There's a bunch of tools and a bunch of different mechanisms you can learn anything.
Yeah. We have more access to information than ever before. There's no excuses.
Yeah. And then the question is, where do you spend your time, right? Because it's so diverse. There's so many things you could learn. And I think if this is a space that interests you, then there's a lot of resources that'll help you get there.
Do you have any advice for someone who maybe just graduated from college? They're nervous, like, am I going to get replaced by AI before I even have a job for myself? Do you have any advice for someone who's at that stage in the career?
Yeah, I mean, in my estimation, if you can like learn to use some of the tools instead of being afraid of them as like a replacement for you, you're going to catapult yourself to the front end of like the job hiring like market. And I don't know how rapidly, your traditional education is adopting to teaching people to use these tools. I think it's going to take some time. The education system by default is feeling a little bit allergic to some of these generative technologies because it'll write a report for you, right? It'll do your math homework for you. Like, so suddenly there's this cheating like opportunity that's emerged. And I think it's causing like, it's causing a rethink in education about how to like really teach people and how to measure the fact that they're actually doing the work and learning. And so I think it's kind of falls down to the individual to like start to learn like in their area of expertise, whatever that is, what tools they can use and how they can use them to do the job better. And then if you're in an interview explaining how you're leveraging the cutting edge of tools to do your job, that's going to be very interesting to an employer, honestly. Like, it's going to say like, this person is like on the front edge and is going to be more effective and more efficient and deliver more value. That's a must hire in my book, right? That, you know, like earlier I said, that's what we look for and people we're hiring. I would be exploring these tool chains and figuring out how to use them. And then I would note that down on your application that, you know, how to use this tool or that tool to do these things more efficiently. It's going to stand out.
I didn't think about this when I asked the question, but so I think about this idea of outliers and outlier access to information, right? In your career. In the book Outliers, a big topic is Bill Gates, right? And he had access to these computers when no one else did. And for us, Seeing and I both were very close in age, right? We graduated from college and high school around the same time. And like, I was on Facebook. When did Facebook really get adopted? My senior year of high school. I don't know when you joined Facebook, Seeing, but it was.
I don't know, but you don't need to age us like that.
But we were spending money on Facebook ads like 1 or 2 years after it was possible to spend money on Facebook ads, right? Google ads had been around for a lot longer, right? And we had other opportunities on the Google ad side. But I think that was one of the big differentiators for our career. I think a lot of good media buyers are kind of from our same generation. And I think that axis of like, okay, if you were 10 years older, you probably weren't on Facebook at that time, right? Like, as a function of being in high school, we're on Facebook at a time where it's like cool and hip and the kids are doing it. And so we had that information first. We knew how to use Facebook first. And then it comes time to join college. I'm running Facebook ads for people I have no business running Facebook ads for, just as a function of like, I know how to use Facebook. And so there's these opportunities that come from it. And there's kind of that same opportunity for people who are graduating right now, right? If you're entering your career, you don't have the bad habits learned, right? Like, I still do a lot of stuff in Google Sheets. I got a lot of manual Google Sheets set up because that's how I've done it for 10 years. And even though I could have a more efficient process, I still use some of these processes that aren't nearly as efficient just because it's how I do it. It's how I've always done it. It's already built, right? And so you kind of have this advantage of the blank slate where you can do things differently, rethink kind of all of these tests that we have to do every day. And that could be a big advantage for someone who's just entering the market.
Yeah, adaptability, like willingness to embrace change is like key in any like high change environment. And the pace of change right now is faster than I've ever seen. And you know, that like presents a lot of opportunities, but you know, sort of the critical point to your thing there is that many people kind of get used to doing something a certain way, and change is hard. If you can not be adverse to change, I think you'll be in a better spot. And you know, that is like the entire idea of an adoption curve in the first place, is like the people who are at the front end benefit. The people who just never change eventually end up like, you know, not being able to compete. And that same thing applies like individually as well as it does for a company. Like, if you're still like, you know, drawing, you know, stick figures on clay tablets, you're not going to compete with somebody with a computer. You got to adapt. And so, yeah, in my estimation, demonstrating that you're on the front edge, that you are an early adopter of these tools and that you're competent with them, that's like, you know, that's going to get you a lot of advantage, just like your story about Facebook. You know, if I had to do Facebook ads, and I'm interviewing 10 people and one of them has actually done it before and can show how they've done it or understands how the platform works, guess who I'm going to hire?
Kind of changing gears a little bit. I know that you're really interested on the crypto side and cryptocurrency. I think that you are thinking about some of those topics in a way that we're not right now. So can you kind of explain to us, like, for people who don't even know, like, what is programmable money and kind of like, why are you interested in those topics?
Yeah, you know, I think this is another area that's gotten like a lot of hype, but has like a lot of like real potential to change the way we interact and how value is exchanged. And like actually there's a lot of like very analogous stuff going on in the crypto space that there is in the AI ML space. Where everyone's tokenizing everything, and there's a bunch of like different scams where people like sell you something that really isn't something, and all of this. But there's real value being built there at the tech stack layer. And at its core, like the interesting thing is it really solved the issue of sort of distributed consensus or distributed trust, the ability to like collectively agree on like a ledger, basically, which is like an accounting book of like who has what, is the real breakthrough there. The Byzantine generals problem is like the example that you can look up where like, they're surrounding a city and all 9 generals have to like basically agree to attack at the same time. If any one of them doesn't, the rest of them die. How do you crack that problem? The sort of proof of work algorithm that Bitcoin came up with, and the mechanisms of implementation of that actually are this really interesting intersection of like economic incentives, alignments, compute, and technology that that has the potential to like really change the way we think about exchanging value. And then you get something like Ethereum, which takes that and like pushes it to the next level where, not only is it like a distributed consensus on the ledger, but you can start to create distributed programs like some of the early ones are distributed finance with DeFi, you might hear it called, where you have like a programmed exchange where you can trade an NFT or trade one token for another token. But like I think over time, the ability to actually program an exchange of value, look at that program and understand exactly how it behaves instead of having to have some like contract that's legally written that the lawyers are interpreting, but it's really just the code itself. I think that's another like really key technology that's emerging right now. I find it like incredibly fascinating. I think it's gonna, it also is very early days. Like adoption of it's really hard. Like it's fraught with risk and fraud. It's the Wild West right now for sure. But in my estimation, like fast forward 10 years, and there's going to be some really seismic shifts in how we are able to do things and interact and exchange value. And then, further, I think there's going to be this really interesting intersection between that and AI, particularly as AI starts to be able to generate like assets, like a video, like that didn't ever really get made of a person. And then this is happening in elections already. These deep fakes and stuff. I suspect just like, cryptocurrency allows you to like publicly prove that you have ownership of some assets on a ledger that everyone agrees to. I suspect there will be some interesting intersections where you can like prove that a piece of content was actually you or not, by like signing off on it publicly. And then so there will be like some really interesting places these two tech things intersect, and I think they're both really really fascinating for whatever it's worth. That may be a bit too technical, but it's an area where I've spent a lot of time trying to learn myself, and it's got me doing interesting things in terms of like research on how it works, and I think it's worth paying attention to.
Do you think that intersection of AI and crypto leads to some like utopian market? Right. I know that Ray Dalio used his algorithms. He built these algorithms to identify new asset classes that came to the market, right, and brought wealth for investors and people investing in those asset classes, right, and protect against risk and all of that type of stuff. So is there that same opportunity using AI and kind of tying that in with the markets in crypto?
I don't know. Maybe I think a lot of it comes down to like creating aligned incentive systems. Like really like a lot of it is like programmatically creating like a social contract that everyone like agrees to. There's a large area of opportunity space that could even be like, shares in a company can be tokenized and put on the blockchain and traded. Video games, like asset in a video game that you find in a loot box could be like could be an NFT. It could be freely traded with anyone, like controlled in some way. There's so many places that it can go. I think it'll work its way into almost everything. Does it create some like utopia? I don't know. Like like I don't think we typically like build better slowly. I guess if you look 200 years ago to now, you might say we're in a utopia if you were back then. But I suspect it works its way into sort of daily life in a lot of ways that people don't expect. And it's an area that, like AI, if you pay attention early, if you watch what's happening, I think you'll be in a good spot in order to understand where it's going and how to take advantage of that in your personal career or in in the types of companies you want to work for and the things you want to build.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up everything, a lot of different things that we've discussed here today. Jon, thank you for your time. You're absolutely a leader in all of these very new spaces. We've loved working with Akkio and are looking forward to working with the tool more in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And we'd please do keep giving us feedback on the tool and how to make it better. It's it's the only way we're going to continue to make it easier for everybody.